Alright, so the following are the questions that were emailed to me when I asked, so what am I supposed to talk about at Take 5 in regards to community? What constitutes a community? What is the shared cohesive element? What makes me part of community? How do I enter a community? I have 5 minutes to answer all of that. 5 minutes and 28 and a half years, and I can't give you a direct answer. Only maybe a story or two that might guide you to an answer. As some of you found out yesterday, I play the viola. I started playing the viola when I was 11 and eventually got pretty good. I loved it, hated practicing, but I loved it. The thing was, at auditions, or if I was lucky enough to be given a solo, I was kind of terrible. Playing alone, not so good. But once I was put into that orchestra, when I was 14, I freaking soared. My one and only trophy that I ever won in my life was at the end of my sophomore year of high school. See, I had jumped from last chair to 4th chair in 1 year out of 26 violas in the most competitive children's orchestra in the state of Georgia. It was a tiny little trophy, but man, when my lanky, nerdy 16-year-old self walked on stage at the awards ceremony to accept that thing, I never felt more proud in my life. The thing was, I absolutely knew it was because I was playing in an orchestra, in a community of people sharing the experience of being awkward teenagers and loving the symphony and spending their afternoons and weekends practicing. They got me and I got them. So by the time I reached college and stopped playing for reasons too long to explain at this moment, I felt a little lost. How would I find my sound, my voice, if you will, now that I didn't have some immediate thing, and in my case a viola, that could be readily identifiable to the other orc dorks out in the world? But I thought to myself, well, that whole shared experience thing seemed to work in high school, so maybe I should stick with that. I remember Mom leaving me that first day of college and just feeling absolutely terrified. I was waving goodbye, playing it relatively cool, but in my head I was screaming, please don't leave! I promise to drop that whole teenage angst thing if you just take me back with you to Georgia. But when I looked around and saw the exact feelings expressed on about 300 other freshman faces, I thought to myself, okay, 300 people feeling relatively exactly the same way I am feeling right now. Let's just go with that. It started with my roommate. I asked her to tell me her story, and from there the girl across the hall, and from there that goth kid upstairs. And about 4 days later I found myself feeling comforted by the beginnings of my very first urban family. I could use the term community, but it just doesn't express what it was that was forming. These were the people I shared every meal with, studied for my first college exams with, who helped me navigate through the trials and tribulations of my first love and eventual heartache, and all the beer funnels and late night study sessions in between. I loved it. I loved that I was just as accountable to myself as I was to them, my urban family, my community. They absolutely 100% shaped me into the woman that I am today. I was so enamored with the process of story sharing and community building that when I graduated and needed to find a job, I discovered that I could actually make a living, kind of, organizing and building communities. Sometimes those communities were called coalitions, sometimes Jews, sometimes Latinos, sometimes Muslims, and sometimes Chicagoans. But whatever the community, I felt comforted and comfortable. It sounds like a cliche, but as I grew within the Chicago community organizing community, I realized three things. One, a lot more often than not, people just function better when they're part of a community, no matter how big or small. Two, personally, I generally never physically looked anything like the people I identified with within my community. And three, even if no one is going to talk with me, then I'm going to talk with them, and my first question would be, so tell me your story.